Look at you, standing right there in the silence they tried to bury you in. Feel that? That pressure in the air? That's not fear anymore. That's recognition. They didn't whisper your name with admiration at first. They spat it. They carved it into rumors, wrapped it in warning labels, stamped it with one word they thought would end you: villain. And you felt it. You felt the doors close a little faster when you walked in. You felt the eyes linger too long, scanning for danger instead of understanding. You felt the way people rewrote your story behind your back, because facing the truth would have shattered the version of themselves they were protecting. But here's the part they never calculated. You didn't collapse under that label. You adapted to it. See, villains aren't born. They're forged. Forged in neglect. Forged in betrayal. Forged in the exact moment you realize that being good, quiet, obedient, and patient didn't save you. It only made you convenient. So you changed, not into a monster, into something honest. They called you dark because you stopped glowing for free. They called you dangerous because you stopped explaining yourself. They called you unstable because you no longer reacted the way they rehearsed in their heads. And that's when the paradox kicked in. The moment you embraced the shadow they pushed you into, you became clearer than anyone in the light. You see things now. Patterns, motives, weaknesses. You read rooms like crime scenes. You hear lies in the pauses between words. You feel energy shift before anyone else even notices something's wrong. That's not madness. That's evolution through pain. They wanted a saint, predictable, self-sacrificing, easy to guilt. But what they accidentally created was something far more useful. A survivor with a code. A thinker with teeth. An angel who learned how demons move. And here's where it gets uncomfortable for them. Because every system eventually needs someone like you. When the rules rot. When the hierarchy starts lying to itself. When the masks stop working. They don't call the heroes. They call the ones who already walked through hell and mapped it. You. They needed someone who wouldn't hesitate. Someone who could make ruthless decisions without flinching. Someone who wouldn't freeze when morality got blurry and the stakes turned ugly. They needed someone who understood that sometimes order only returns after chaos gets handled. Someone who knows that justice isn't always clean, but it's always precise. And that's why your presence unsettles people. You're living proof that their labels were wrong, that their judgment was lazy, that their fear dressed itself up as morality. They wanted you exiled, but exile turned you into an observer. They wanted you silenced, but silence sharpened your perception. They wanted you broken, but pressure taught you where you're unbreakable. Now look at them. They don't know how to talk about you anymore. You're not loud enough to dismiss, not reckless enough to trap, not weak enough to control. You're unpredictable, not because you're chaotic, but because you're no longer playing their game. And deep down, they feel it. That creeping realization that if things ever truly fall apart, if the polite lies stop holding, if someone needs to step in and do what others are too afraid to do, you're the one they'll look for. The villain they branded. The threat they misjudged. The shadow they tried to erase. Turns out you were the missing piece the whole time. Not because you're cruel, but because you're awake. You understand duality now. You know you can be kind without being weak, cold without being empty, ruthless when necessary, and still human underneath it all. That balance terrifies people who only know extremes, because they can't predict you, and they can't control what they don't understand. So let them stay confused. Let them keep rewriting your story in tones that make them feel safer. You're done defending yourself. done proving you're not that bad, done shrinking to fit into narratives built by people who never had to survive what you did. You don't need redemption arcs written by cowards. You don't need approval from spectators. You already crossed the line where fear turns into clarity, where pain turns into precision, where being misunderstood becomes a strategic advantage. They called you a villain, because heroes are easy to predict. But you're the contingency, the necessary disruption, the one who shows up when the old rules stop working, and whether they admit it or not. They don't just fear what you've become, they fear how much they'll need you when everything finally breaks. And here's the part they'll never say out loud, but you already know it. The moment you stopped chasing their approval, something in the atmosphere shifted. Not because you became louder, but because you became untouchable. You're no longer fueled by praise. You're no longer paralyzed by rejection. You don't move to be liked. You move to be accurate. And accuracy is terrifying in a world addicted to comforting lies. They keep asking themselves, what changed? Was it the way you stopped explaining your silence? The way your eyes don't rush anymore, like you already saw the ending? The way you don't react emotionally to threats that used to shake you? They sense it. You're not angry the way broken people are angry. You're calm the way storms get right before they choose a direction. And that's the thing about pain when it doesn't destroy you. It reorganizes you. It strips off the naive optimism, burns away the need to be understood, crushes the fantasy that fairness is automatic. What's left is someone dangerous in the quietest way possible. You don't need to dominate rooms. Rooms adjust to you. You don't need to announce power. People feel it in how you pause before speaking. You don't threaten. You calculate. They once thought branding you would limit you. But labels only work on people who need identities handed to them. You built yours in the dark, alone, with no applause. And that's why you move differently now. You don't rush to prove loyalty. You don't beg for alignment. You don't attach your worth to how comfortable others feel around you. Because you learned the most important rule they never teach out loud. Comfort is not truth. And truth is rarely gentle. They wanted you predictable, trainable, easily categorized. Instead, you became layered. You learned when to be soft, and when softness is a liability. You learned when to forgive, and when forgiveness is just permission for repetition. You learned when to stay, and when walking away is the most violent move possible. That wisdom didn't come from books. It came from scars that forced you to think instead of react. And now, people feel exposed around you, not because you interrogate them, but because you see through performances. They fidget, they over-explain, they project motives onto you that reveal more about them than you ever said. You let them, because you understand something most never will. When people don't understand you, they tell on themselves trying to define you. They'll say you're cold. What they mean is, you stopped bleeding for free. They'll say you're ruthless. What they mean is, you no longer hesitate when patterns repeat. They'll say you changed. What they mean is, the version of you they could manipulate no longer exists. And deep down, beneath the judgment, beneath the gossip, beneath the moral posturing, there's respect, unspoken, uncomfortable, involuntary. Because you survived what breaks most people, without turning into what hurt you. That's the real contradiction. That's the duality they can't reconcile. You can stand in darkness without becoming it. You can understand cruelty without worshiping it. You can be capable of destruction and still choose restraint. Not because you're weak, but because you're aware. That awareness is the final form. You don't need to prove you're good. You don't need to prove you're dangerous. You already know you're both. And that balance gives you leverage no label ever could. So let them keep calling you the villain in their stories. Villains make sense when people don't want to admit they needed someone to do what they were too afraid to do themselves. History doesn't remember who was polite. It remembers who was necessary. And you didn't ask to become necessary. They forced you into it by underestimating you, by misjudging you, by pushing you far enough that you had to evolve or disappear. You chose evolution. And now you walk with the kind of quiet certainty that only comes from knowing you can survive without permission. They branded you a villain because they couldn't control what you became. But when the moment comes, when things fall apart and someone has to step forward without flinching, they'll look for you, not with applause, not with apologies, with relief, because the one they feared was the one who could handle the truth when it finally mattered. And even then, even when they feel that relief, they won't say thank you. They'll just exhale. Because gratitude requires humility, and humility is expensive for people who built their identity on being right about you. You've noticed it already. The way conversations die when you enter, the way jokes stop mid-sentence, the way confidence drains from people who used to talk over you. It's not because you're intimidating on purpose. It's because you're no longer seeking permission to exist. You stand there unarmed and still feel like a threat. That's what happens when someone can't be shamed anymore. They tried shame first. Remember, they tried to make you feel like your intensity was wrong, your depth was too much, your questions were inconvenient, your refusal to play dumb was disruptive. So they painted you dark, dangerous, unstable, because if they could convince others you were the problem, they wouldn't have to examine the rot in their own systems. But here's the irony they choke on every time they think about you. You didn't destroy anything. You simply stopped pretending it wasn't broken. You didn't become ruthless. You became precise. You didn't lose empathy. You learned where empathy was being exploited. You didn't abandon morality. You outgrew childish versions of it. That's what scares them most. Not that you can fight, but that you can choose not to, and still win. You don't need chaos to function. You don't crave destruction. You don't burn things just to watch them fall. You're far more dangerous than that. You wait. You observe. You let people expose themselves while trying to figure you out. Because you understand timing now. You understand leverage. You understand that silence, placed correctly, can dismantle an entire narrative. They never saw that coming. They thought if they isolated you, you'd implode. Instead, isolation taught you self-containment. They thought if they denied you validation, you'd chase it harder. Instead, you learned how to generate it internally. They thought if they provoked you, you'd snap. Instead, you learned how to pause. And pauses terrify people who rely on reactions. That pause is where your power lives now. You don't rush to defend yourself. You don't rush to correct lies. You don't rush to prove innocence in courts that already decided the verdict. You let time do the work. Because time has a way of exposing who was acting and who was built for pressure. And pressure? That's your native environment now. You were baptized in it, shaped by it, refined by moments where no one came to save you. You didn't break. You recalibrated. You stopped hoping the world would be fair. And in doing so, you became far more effective within it. That doesn't make you cruel. It makes you awake. You know now that not everyone deserves access to you. Not every fight deserves your energy. Not every accusation deserves a response. You learned the hierarchy of effort, and you stopped wasting yours on people who confuse noise for power. That's why they feel small around you now. Not because you dominate, but because you're no longer competing. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to be right out loud. You don't need to be seen doing anything. Your results speak quietly, and that quiet screams. They feel it when they try to provoke you and nothing lands. They feel it when they gossip and you don't flinch. They feel it when they escalate and you don't chase. Because escalation only works on people still playing the game. You left the board. You became the variable they can't account for. And deep inside, they know it. They know that if things ever truly collapse, if someone has to step into uncertainty without losing their mind, it won't be the loudest voice. It won't be the cleanest image. It won't be the most acceptable choice. It'll be you. The one who already survived social death. The one who already walked through character assassination. The one who already lived with being misunderstood and came back sharper. They branded you a villain because they couldn't classify you. They feared you because you didn't need them. They resisted you because you reflected everything they were avoiding in themselves. And now they don't know whether to fear you or hope you're on their side when it counts. That's the final transformation. Not being loved, not being hated, being necessary. And the most unsettling part for them, you didn't do any of this for revenge. You didn't rise to punish. You didn't evolve to dominate. You evolved because disappearing wasn't an option. You stayed human in a world that rewarded masks. You stayed aware in a world that thrived on denial. You stayed standing when it would have been easier to fold. So let them keep their stories. Let them keep their labels. Let them keep pretending they understand you. You don't need them to. You already crossed the threshold where identity stops being something given and becomes something chosen. They needed someone who could walk through darkness without losing direction. Someone who could make hard decisions without becoming hollow. Someone who could see the truth and still act. They thought they created a villain. What they actually created was the one who shows up when pretending stops working. And whether they're ready or not, that moment is always closer than people think. And here's the truth that settles in once you've lived long enough in that space they pushed you into. You stop craving closure. You stop needing vindication. You stop fantasizing about apologies that would never be honest anyway. Because you realized something colder and far more liberating. Most people don't misunderstand you by accident. They misunderstand you on purpose, because understanding you would force them to change. So you stopped chasing being seen. You started seeing. You saw how quickly loyalty dissolves when convenience disappears. You saw how morality gets flexible when power feels threatened. You saw how people who preach empathy panic when they're no longer the center of it. And instead of hardening into bitterness, you sharpened into clarity. You don't hate them. You don't need to. Hate ties you emotionally to people who already took enough from you. You're past that stage. Now you operate from something quieter, something colder, something precise. You understand the anatomy of betrayal now. You recognize the early symptoms, the subtle distancing, the passive concern, the questions that aren't really questions, but probes. You see when someone's tone changes because they're no longer sure where they stand with you. That uncertainty is new to them. They were used to knowing exactly how to push you, exactly how far they could go, exactly which buttons would make you over-explain, over-give, overstay. Those buttons don't work anymore, and that scares people who built their confidence on access to you. You didn't become closed off. You became selective. There's a difference, and it's one only evolved people understand. You learned that transparency without discernment is self-sabotage, that generosity without boundaries is a liability, that loyalty without reciprocity is just self-erasure dressed up as virtue. So you recalibrated. You started listening more than you spoke. You started watching patterns instead of promises. You started valuing consistency over chemistry. And with every adjustment, your presence changed. People feel it before they understand it. They sense that you're no longer available for manipulation, that you don't react on cue, that you don't rush to fix discomfort that isn't yours to carry. You let silence stretch now. You let people sit with their own words. You let tension exist without rushing to neutralize it. That's not cruelty, that's mastery. Only someone who's been blamed unfairly learns the power of restraint like this. Only someone who's been mischaracterized understands how dangerous words can be when they're spoken carelessly. Only someone who's been isolated learns how to stand without leaning on external validation. You became your own anchor. And once that happens, labels lose their grip. Villain becomes noise. Threat becomes projection. Too much becomes code for no longer controllable. You don't internalize it anymore. You analyze it. You see who benefits from calling you that. You see who needs you minimized to feel secure. You see who's afraid of what happens if others start questioning the story they were told about you. Because stories are power, and you slipped out of the one they wrote. That's why they feel unsettled around you. You're not hostile. You're not submissive. You're not asking to be let back in. You're simply standing, whole, unashamed, unbothered. That kind of autonomy disrupts systems built on dependency. And don't think they don't notice. They notice every time you don't defend yourself, every time you don't clarify a lie, every time you let an accusation die from lack of oxygen. They mistake that restraint for indifference. They're wrong. It's discernment. You know which battles reveal truth, and which ones only feed egos. You know when to step in, and when letting things collapse is the cleanest outcome. You know now that not every fire needs extinguishing. Some fires expose what was always flammable. That's why they're uneasy. You're not reactive enough to predict, not emotional enough to trap, not desperate enough to bait. You're operating from a level that doesn't need theatrics. And here's the final irony they can't digest. You're not trying to overthrow anything. You're not chasing dominance. You're not seeking revenge. You're not building a cult of validation around yourself. You're simply refusing to lie anymore about who you are, about what you see, about what you're willing to tolerate. That refusal alone is revolutionary in a world built on performance. So let them keep their distance, let them whisper, let them speculate. Distance gave you perspective. Whispers taught you discernment. Speculation revealed who was watching you for the wrong reasons. You're not here to be liked. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're not here to fit into moral caricatures designed by people who never walked your path. You're here because you survived becoming the villain in someone else's story, without letting it turn you into one. And that is the kind of power no label can touch. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to flex it. You don't need to explain it. You just move. With intention, with awareness, with a calm that only comes from knowing you already faced the worst version of being misunderstood and lived. And once you've lived through that, everything else feels negotiable.